Welcome to Godly Play today. This is our story for today. We can tell that this box is old and it's gold, which tells us that today's story is a parable. Let's find out what's inside. Here is the Annunciation. Here is the Transfiguration. Here is the Resurrection. These moments of God's presence are like the beginning, the middle, and the end. But the story never really ends. In many ways, it is still going on today. Here, the angel Gabriel announced to Mary that she would be the mother of God. God overshadowed her, and the baby was born. Here is rejection at home, a kind of blindness. Here, he is calling the disciples. Here, Jesus is blessing and teaching. Here, Jesus is feeding the 5,000. Here is the teaching about the law and Sabbath rest. All this happened near Jesus' home in the north, where Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee still are today. At his time in Galilee was drawing to a close, Jesus climbed a mountain with 3 of his disciples. They saw Moses and Elijah standing with Jesus until a cloud overshadowed them. When the cloud was gone, only Jesus was there. He led the 3 disciples down the mountain. Jesus and the 12 turned toward Jerusalem for the last time. Here are some of the things that happened on the way. Healing of Bartimaeus. Jesus and the disciples went south. They probably walked the pilgrim's path along the Jordan River, then turned west and entered Jericho, one of the oldest cities in the world. As they went into the city, a blind man started shouting from the side of the road, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." The blind man was called Bartimaeus. People tried to keep him quiet, but Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." The disciples did. Bartimaeus sprang up and made his way towards the sound of Jesus' voice. "I want to see." "Go your way, your faith has made you well." Bartimaeus did not go his own way, but followed Jesus on towards Jerusalem, because now he could truly see. Blessing the children. As Jesus and the 12 moved towards Jerusalem, people followed them. Sometimes mothers and fathers brought their children to him to be blessed. You can see Jesus facing a mother coming down the road with her children, while the disciples are looking at something else. One time, when children were brought to him, the disciples tried to push them away. Perhaps they didn't want the children to bother Jesus. Some say that Jesus was indignant about this. He was angry. It was not right. He said to his disciples, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." He then laid his hands on the children and blessed them. Another time he said that if you welcome children, you welcome him and the one who sent him. He meant that welcoming children was a way to know God. The summary of the law. While Jesus and the disciples walked towards Jerusalem, they were not only followed by people who loved them, but also by some Pharisees who did not. They were worried about what Jesus was saying, so they asked him questions to see if he would say something against the Torah, the law of Moses. They cared a lot about the Torah, so they wanted to be sure that Jesus followed its rules and the way of its stories. One day, a lawyer asked Jesus what the greatest commandment was. That was a kind of trick because all the 10 commandments are important. Jesus said that the way to think about the law of Moses is like this: you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first commandment. The second is also about love. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said that these 2 laws contained not only everything written in the law, but also in the prophets. One of the scribes said that Jesus had answered truly. The Pharisees went away impressed. Communion with sinners. When Jesus and the disciples passed through Jericho on the way to Jerusalem, they also met Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was rich. He was a tax collector, so he took money from his neighbors for the Romans. People hated him, and they did as they did most tax collectors and everyone else who worked for the Romans. Zacchaeus heard that Jesus was coming, but he was not very tall, so he climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus passing by. Something drew him to Jesus. When Jesus walked by, he saw Zacchaeus in the tree, so he called to him, "Come down quickly. I will stay with you today." Zacchaeus climbed down and led him to his home. The people watching were confused and upset because they thought Zacchaeus was a sinner. Why was Jesus going to his house? Zacchaeus did not know why Jesus was coming to his house. All he knew is that he was grateful and that he saw his life in a new way. He gave half of his goods to the poor for every piece of money he had stolen from his neighbors. He gave back 4. Jesus said, "Today salvation has come to this house." Then they enjoyed being together around the table to share the evening meal, despite what people said. This was a kind of Holy Communion. Sabbath rest. The journey to Jerusalem was almost over. Jesus stayed nearby to rest at the house in Bethany of Simon the leper. They were having supper. A woman, no one knew who she was, came in carrying a beautiful jar. She went right up to Jesus and poured it on his head. This was like Another time, when Mary poured ointment on Jesus' feet and dried them with her hair, but that was at Mary and Martha's house in Bethany. They lived with their brother Lazarus, who was raised from the dead by Jesus. Martha was making supper when her sister Mary poured the soothing ointment on Jesus' hot and dusty feet. At Simon's house, the disciples were angry with the unknown woman and her jar. Why waste this? It could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Jesus said something like this to them. Why do you trouble this woman? She has done something beautiful. It is like a blessing. You will always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me with you. She has done what she could. She has anointed me for burial. When my story is told, her story will also be told, for she has done a good thing. Everyone was silent. Jesus must have wiped away the oil that had run down over his face. They finished their meal, and the unknown woman went away. Now I wonder what goes here. Now I wonder what part of this story you like best. I wonder what part is the most important. I wonder where you are in the story. I wonder what part of the story is about you. I wonder if there is any part of the story we could leave out and still have all the story we need. I wonder what you will make your work today. I look forward to seeing you here next week for Godly Play.